Hello and welcome to LibreQuest. My name is Matt, and you can find this podcast at LibreQuest.org from September 28, 2019, posted on TechRights.org, posted by Dr. Roy Shestowitz. An article titled, "Shortly after Richard Stallman says he's head of GNU, he writes, I hereby step down as head of GNU project, effective immediately." Interesting. So further down the article, it says Torvalds and Stallman are both being besieged, albeit in somewhat different ways. Both are also at different stages, rather, of an apparent phase out. It's all happening so quickly. MIT, FSF, now GNU. He's being, in quotes, canceled. It's all happening so quickly. MIT, FSF, now GNU, as reported by Phoronix. Stallman sought to clarify that he had remained in charge of GNU, but posted a short time ago this odd, contradictory update. I quote, "I hereby step down as head of GNU project effectively immediately." Okay, very interesting. If you want to read the rest of that article, you can find it over on techrights.org under RMS being canceled. That's an interesting one. And here's a fun one: how to mount an exFAT drive on Debian Linux. exFAT is Extended File Allocation Table. It's a proprietary Microsoft file system optimized for flash memory devices such as SD cards and USB flash drive. It was designed to replace the old 32-bit FAT32 file system that cannot store files larger than 4 GB. exFAT file system is supported by default on all the latest versions of Windows and Mac OS operating systems. Debian, like most other major Linux distributions, doesn't provide support for the proprietary exFAT file system out of the box. In this tutorial, we'll show you how to enable exFAT support on Debian. And it looks like I did not get the rest of the article. So that's great. That was posted September 28, 2019. I don't see who wrote the article, but you can find that over at linuxize.com. That's linuxize.com. How to mount an exFAT file system on Debian. That was not helpful. I don't know why I even have that one here. That's great. Okay, well, anyway, thank you for joining me today. This is episode 1. It's gonna be a mess. I'll tell you that right now, because I've never done this before. Moving on, we have from September 29, 2019, the FSF. That's the Free Software Foundation. May not be trustworthy anymore. It's believed. It said to have just defaced Richard Stallman's personal website. And Richard Stallman, if you don't know who Richard Stallman is, you can find some information on him at Wikipedia. He started the GNU project. And let's continue on here in the article. It says, quote, Stallman.org was defaced by an FSF employee, unquote. I've just been told. Interesting. So apparently what happened is the website was altered. The code was altered, and it was moved from the Free Software Foundation hosting over to new separate hosting. I don't know. It says something is going on, and rumors suggest that the large corporations may play a role. Who knows? Who knows? I don't know. I don't know, you don't know, we don't know. So earlier, I guess it's been about a week and a half ago, I noticed that I had a problem with one of my systems. And I was playing a video game just to kind of monitor my system, see how things are going. I actually have 2 monitors. I like to have 2 monitors on most of my systems, and that way I can keep an eye on the temperatures, drive storage, network traffic, what else, CPU utilization, usage, and kind of get an idea of where I'm at on when I'm using different programs, just so that I know exactly what's going on my systems. So I don't know if I would recommend doing that, but that's something I do, and it's probably a little excessive. But so I have a display to the right or to the left for the main display, and that one display is dedicated solely for monitoring the system. So it's a monitoring monitor, pretty much. So I took some video of what exactly was going on with the system, and I noticed that it had topped out at about 99 Celsius, and by some miracle continued to work. So I figured it was probably either the fan assembly, which I knew it wasn't because I had just recently replaced it. Now this is like a second-hand GPU that I got for a really good price. It's an R9 384 gigabyte, which is maybe benches slightly higher than the GTX 960 4 gigabyte, but it is a GDDR5 GPU. So I figured it must have been the thermal paste and thermal pads, but the fan assembly and heatsink that were on this card did not use any thermal paste, and it was literally just 4 screws that were holding the heatsink onto the GPU. So I don't know if that's how this product shipped, but it's got XFX on the fan assembly, so I'm assuming it's an FXX card. I'm not sure. So anyhow, basically I just replaced the thermal paste on it, and it was actually pretty simple, just removing the 4 screws on the back and pulling the wire harness loose for the fan assembly, and then that exposed the GPU. And that thermal paste that was on there was like stone. It was so dried and crusty. So I was using the like a Q-tips, the Q-tips that are just like cotton on one end, and it's just like a wooden stick. So you've got a wooden stick on the other end of the cotton, and that the solution that I used to kind of break up that old thermal paste was isopropyl alcohol. So it does a really good job of breaking up that old paste. And but with this paste, it was so dried and crusty and burned that I actually had to use the reverse end of the Q-tip to lightly press on the old thermal paste to get it to actually come loose from the GPU. It was pretty crusty, and that's pretty typical, but this was like it was bad. 99 Celsius. I don't think I've seen that before on a GPU, and so yeah, it was pretty bad. Anyhow, so I ended up doing the same thing on the heatsink. I had to actually scrape all that nasty junk off of there, and I actually worked on that for quite a long while because there was just some real nasty gunk coming off of that thing. But when it was all said and done, I just replaced the thermal paste, reseated those 4 screws on the back, and I like to use that kind of like an X pattern when tightening the screws. It was 4, so I did like top right, bottom left, bottom right, top left, and then just kind of cinched them down, make sure they were nice and snug on there. And then of course retested the card, and I think it was topping out at about, it kind of settled. It was fluctuating there for a while, but it finally started to build up, and it was the same scene in the game that I was in previously that was hitting the 99 Celsius. So retesting on that same scene kind of gave me a bit of an honest look at what kind of improvement there was just from replacing the thermal paste and figuring out if that's what it was that was going wrong. Because I mean, there's not that many things that could go wrong on a GPU. But yeah, so it ended up being the thermal paste. But I think it topped out at about 60 degrees Celsius, and it basically evened out closer to 58 during that same scene of the game. So that actually worked out pretty well on that. So what else did I have to talk about? I think that's about it. This is episode 1. I don't know. I've never done this before, but I thought I'd give it a shot. And yeah, that's it. I've said I don't know how many times. Anyway, thank you for listening. I appreciate you taking the time to watch this possibly interesting, possibly terrible video, first video, and podcast. So this podcast is going to be available at LibreQuest.org. The video format will be available on LibreQuest.org along with the audio format. And then I'm also going to have the audio podcast on archive.org. And then the video side of things will also be on YouTube. And I have set up a Patreon and a Subscribe Star, and the reason that I did both was because I thought if I'm going to do videos on Linux and different technology that I like, then I want to be able to review some stuff and after I install it, talk about it and kind of poke around with it or whatever. I want to be able to pass that on to somebody that might actually really, really like it more than I do. And I was able to find some, I've got them back here on this shelf. Let me show you that if you're watching the video, not listening. There's PC-DOS 6.3, there's MS-DOS 6.2, and there's OS2 2.0, and all those are brand new in the box. They've still got the plastic on them, never been opened. So I'm actually working right now on building it's a newish system, and it's inside of like an AT form factor case, and it's got a nice CRT monitor, nice everything kind of in the same era, keyboard, a mouse with a ball, not optical mouse. And but the innards of the system are actually it's an Intel G840. I think it's an LG 1155 processor. It's got like, I think I put 8 gigabytes of DDR3 1333 megahertz RAM, and then it's running off. It's got 2 SATA 3 SSDs, 120 gigabytes each. And it's got an HP Pro 6300 motherboard in it, and that thing, it's very proprietary, and it's a BTX form factor, so you can't just put that into an ATX or ITX or whatever. It's just, it doesn't, everything's kind of reversed where your PCI slots are versus your back IO it's like mirrored. Pretty much, and I'm sure you've probably seen that before with a BTX form factor. It's actually, I have a Optiplex 755 over on this side of the office here, if you're watching and not listening, and that Optiplex 755, it's the same thing. It's a Dell system, but it is the BTX form factor. But the difference in the way that Dell did it and the way that HP did it is their custom BIOS on there. If you don't have the system fans, the front USB, the rear USB, and the front audio hooked in, then every time you get a post error when you boot the system. So I've had to do a few things to actually get that to just post right into the Linux desktop without having to hit F1. So it's the HP Pro 6300, or it might be 6300 Pro, I'm not really sure, but I just have I use a DuPont connector kit for pretty much everything wiring related, so I just had to make some jumpers to put over those, and I plan to do some video on that and kind of talk about that and explain exactly what it was that I had to do, what pins had to be jumped in order to get rid of those errors on that system. HP probably doesn't like that kind of thing, but I got the board for, I think I paid $12 for it used, so you can't really go wrong there. And then it's got a GT 1030 DDR5 2 gigabyte graphic card in it, so it's not too bad for light gaming and that kind of thing, but it's going to be pretty rad for testing like old operating systems and just in general. I've also got some Mac games, some old Mac games that I'm going to be testing. I'm going to emulate the Mac. I thought about getting an actual, OS 9 Mac, but I'm like, that it's heavy. Shipping would be ridiculous. But anyway, back to the Patreon Subscribe Star thing. The reason I did that is because Patreon in their terms of service makes it pretty clear that anything chance related, lottery like or raffle like is prohibited on their platform. So I got the subscribe star because I read through their terms of service, and they don't seem to do that. So basically, I'm gonna basically, like when you go to a conference and you can get like a raffle ticket, that's what I'm gonna be doing. Is you sign up for $1 or more or whatever you want to do, but it's $1, and then you get it a raffle, basically a raffle entry, and it works the same way as if you were to go to an event and get a ticket. As long as you're in the building, you're good as gold. So it's like pretty much anybody who's just currently on the subscribe star part of things, they'll be entered in a raffle. And I'm just gonna like test this stuff, take a look at it, make some content about it, and then just kind of ship it out to people who are actually interested in this stuff. If you're not interested in that stuff, on the Patreon side, I did like get a sticker, or join me and chat for a while, or whatever. Or if you don't want to, that's cool too. I don't, it's whatever you want to do. But yeah, just that's kind of why I wanted to do the two different platforms, because one is kind of prohibitive on that sort of thing, and yeah, I don't want to make anybody angry in regard to that. But anyway, LibreQuest.org, there's a forum there. I'm going to be posting the episodes there. There's general topics, and then like there's like a supporter kind of a section where you can go and find out how to enter into the raffle giveaway stuff, the free stuff. So I like free stuff, and I know other people probably like free stuff too. Anyway, thank you for joining me here today. And let's see here. I've got a music to play out the first episode, and this is going oh so smoothly. So let me go ahead and bring that music up, and thank you for joining me today. And I hope you have a great rest of the evening, morning, night, whatever time it happens to be. I'll try to be back here tomorrow because I've got some other interesting things, at least interesting I think, to talk about. Thanks.